Good morning, and welcome back to the iHealth channel, Fit and Fab channel, and iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here, and a new show, a new guest. Today's guest is an author, writer of many books, and the specific book we're going to talk about today is also a program manager for disabilities in the city of New York, and we'll talk about his role in that, and he'll give us a little bit more. Gabriel Gherasim, very great to have you on the show today, and look forward to an exciting content and information from your book and from your journey and all the good work that you do to help people in different aspects of their lives. So Gabriel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to share with the listeners and the viewers some of the ideas, particularly from the book we are going to talk about, Gratia Cantantes. So again, my name is Gabriel Gherasim, perfect pronunciation of the last name, by the way.
I tried.
So I've been working since 2003 in various positions that had to deal with assisting individuals with disabilities to remain independent in the community, be it in terms of their physical and or mental disabilities. So I've been working with the Department for the Aging as a case manager. I've been teaching psychology at Long Island Business Institute. And I've also been doing group and individual therapy for 4.5 years with an outpatient agency which assisted individuals with mental and or chemical addiction issues, where the book Gratia Cantantes is coming from, if you will. Presently I work as a borough manager for Manhattan at Sydney, which is an organization that has a 40 years history in assisting individuals with disabilities in New York City.
Wow, that's a lot. That's pretty busy.
Yes.
I think I sometimes I complain that I have too many things going on, a lot of things that I'm juggling, but I guess I'm not the only one out there.
Well, we try to break it down, right, as much as we can in the 6 to 8 hours work, 6 to 8 hours recreation, and 6 to 8 hours sleep in the 24-hour cycle. Is it always balanced? I wouldn't think so. We just strive for the balance, don't we?
Actually, Gabriel, that's interesting how you broke it down to a nice even balance for business life and body needs. But back to your point, I don't think a lot of people do that, and unfortunately some people are totally unbalanced with that, and sometimes it affects their well-being, family, their mindset, everything. I mean, their health. So I think while that's not the topic of today, but really it's a good little spin there that I really like to just kind of point out, because we get involved all the time with things.
Absolutely.
And work gets in the way, and we forget that there is more than just work. And ultimately, that is, we can't just run. Eventually, we'll run out of energy. And then
you're absolutely correct. We invest so much of our health and time inordinately so, and of our health really, and energy to make money in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and then in the 50s, 60s, and above, we are investing money to recuperate our health. So unless we keep it balanced in the homeostasis aspect, which includes the 8-8-8 cycle in the 24-hour cycle, if you will, which I wrote about in the book.
That is a super advice. I would literally recommend anyone listening, please take that note. It's important, and it's valuable. So the word, let me say it right. Gratia
Cantantes. Yes.
Gratia Cantantes. So what does that mean in Latin?
Absolutely. Right? Yes, it is Latin based. You are correct. So Gratia Cantantes, I didn't just name it just to give a hard time to people who would want to pronounce or read it. It is actually very pertinent to the content of the book. So gratia means thankful or thankfulness, and cant means singing, and antes means before. So the long translation would be singing thankfulness before. Before what? Before something good happens in one's life. In other words, being grateful, um, forward grateful, if you will. So there is a reason behind it. There is a technique and a science behind the why this might be benefiting us both internally and externally, and we can delve further as we discuss this. So Gratia Cantantes invites for a paradigm of thinking, feeling, talking, and acting, which is based on gratitude, as opposed to seeking occasions to be afraid, which in turn will lead to one getting angry, and in looking at the world as a dangerous place to live in, which is no way to live. Granted, there are situations, people, places, things, and actions where imminent danger requires for one to be cautious, afraid, get angry, fight, take flight, or even freeze, depending on the circumstances, in order to survive. The problem is not so much with acting, if you will, responding or even reacting, because it's two different things, right? Responding and reacting when the imminent danger is happening. The problem is that after that, or even before that, we tend to worry unnecessarily. And in so doing, we create so much stress, unnecessary stress in our lives, that it creates a miserable experience, just being afraid. So gratitude really involves appreciating the daily beauty in one's life, the half full part, while indeed trying to progress, as you and I were talking before the show started, on a daily basis with what we need to do in order to move ahead in life.
So something prompted you to actually write this book. Is it experience, things that you've encountered, or is it the work that you've been doing, or is it a combination of all? And also you talked about gratitude, and some people have it, some people may not have it.
Yes.
Let's talk about those two elements.
Yes, so excellent question. So what prompted it? It was a combination, all of the above. Um, I opened myself to learn, and to do that in a way that is a combination of interaction between seen and unseen experiences. So Gratia Cantantes really clarifies, first of all, what the priorities of a human being are. So let me ask you, if I said, what is a human being made out of? What would you say a human being is made out of?
Well, that would be a very deep question. I would say physically, biologically, or just
Go for it. What comes to mind?
Well, there's the personality, there's the soul, there is the. I mean, depends what your beliefs are, but I mean, it's a combination, right? It's also your things that you've learned over your life, from your things that you inherited, through your parents or to your society. So that's what makes a human being. All the elements that feed into your character, besides your biology and your spiritual, being. I mean, I think everything else. So it's a lot of things, and sometimes, in my opinion, I think there's a lot of influence, and that can shape a little bit who we are and how we behave. And I think, I've had a few guests that talked about behavior and things like that. I think that's what shapes a human being. Again, I'm not sure that's the right answer, but that's just my opinion. What is a human being? It's a complex being.
So it's a perfect definition you've given. It encompassed both the human values in us, namely material things, physiology, um, um, material values on the outside, house, car, and so forth, money, titles. So that would be the values that are aiming towards satisfying the human in us. Little less is being paid attention to the values and the constitution of the being in the human being, which you actually mentioned, and that's very rare because usually people think in terms of human values, not so much in the being values. So you mentioned in terms of being values, one's spirituality, one's thoughts and life experiences and interpretations, one's consciousness, and so forth. So exactly. So the Gratia Cantantes, which also has the subtitle of Recognisance Therapy, which really means healing through gratitude. Therapy means healing, and Recognisance means gratitude in the Romance languages. So basically, I am inviting the readers to review both these values, the humans and the beings, and particularly to keep in check, if you will, in the right proportion based on their own needs, um, the the need to satisfy both of them, if you will. So in other words, one may pay a lot of attention to the material values, and that is good to a point because the material values answer to the verb to have, right? I want to have a house, I want to have a car, and so forth. Not so much is being paid attention in the West, at least, maybe too much in the East, to the detriment of the having values or the human values when it comes to being values, right? One's consciousness, one's thoughts, one's feelings, one's emotions. So the being values answer to the question, predictably enough, of being something as opposed to having something. The confusion very often comes when individuals try to use this analogy. If I try to reach an FM radio station by being on AM, am I able to do that? You work in radio. How likely is that?
That is interesting. I like that. Well,
And
it happening.
so and vice versa. If I'm trying to reach an AM station, right, on FM, how likely is that? Unfortunately, a lot of human beings are trying to reach being values such as love and loyalty and dedication by providing having values to the people from whom they want that sort of attention, the being values. And that's not going to happen, right? So somebody can buy the wife the trophy car and the trophy house, and the idea is if I buy you all these things, then you will be my trophy wife, right? And they get very surprised when after a while the so-called trophy wife divorces the person and takes away the trophy car and the trophy house. So
And vice
and
versa too.
and vice yeah, and vice versa. So the reason for that really is because love is an electromagnetic field of energy, very conscious based. Some people may say divine. And just like with anything energy based, one can radiate, send, emanate love, one can receive love, one cannot take love from anybody. So taking is a having value, a material value, a human value, whereas giving is a being value. So the book details really the nuances and intricacies of these ideas and values and parameters by using a lot of literature and anecdotal evidence, scientific facts, analysis based on quantum physics, hopefully in a digestible form, so that people don't get lost and bored as I would have if I had not written the book in this simple form, I would hope.
Well, I mean, it's pretty deep stuff. I mean, I mean, I'm sure as simple as you can get it, it's still got to be to a degree of a complexity. But I mean, you got to really get into it. But so we're talking about gratitude, thankfulness, and understanding the difference between having and like really giving and things like that. But why is it that today, more than ever, people are really seeing value as material things as the way to own the world, or to even think that they're better than others because they have more, or so on and so forth. It's like it's becoming the currency that to justify somebody's worth, we look at what their net worth is and what their physical belongings and possessions, as opposed to who they are in character and their personality and stuff like that. I mean, is there anything that has been out there that talks, and maybe you've addressed this, but that is a big question.
It's a superb question. And this is what happens when we either confuse being values with having values, or we do away altogether with them. We cannot fool spirituality, loyalty, love, kindness. We cannot fool those into turning into material values, and we cannot buy those. In the 1600s, we had, with Newtonian concepts of science, the big clock view of the human body, which is okay for the human part of the body, where the idea was if somebody gets to need a kidney transplant, then we nowadays we can certainly do it, and we were able to do it in the second half of the last century. This is fine and dandy for the human part in us. Any doctor worth his or her salt will know that the physical matter alone is not going to do it, that the patient has to take an active role, and that very often is involved in his or her openness to healing, involvement into her own healing, um, and the engagement of what we would call consciousness and spirituality, that electromagnetic force without which we are all dead.
Well, so we're evoking here, I guess, the power of will, the willingness of people, also the mind over the body, because, and I think the mind is the subconscious, or that may be where the spirit resides, of a human being, and I think that's what pushes sometimes the individuals to. And I had a couple of shows recently where people had traumatic experiences, and they literally, were able to conquer those things based on their will. And years later, I mean, they're the most vibrant people you can possibly meet. So it's true. It's just not okay. You can take all the pills, but if your mind is not accepting the treatment, it's not going to do anything for you. That is a very I guess strict concept that people may elude sometimes. They may not actually see it as a big thing, but that is what makes a difference. And to your point, even in the medicine, doctors can only give you, the physical piece of it, but you have to reinforce it.
Absolutely. You mentioned an interesting word there, mind. So let me ask you.
Uh-oh.
I like to dialogue. And by the way, there is no right or wrong answer. It's a subjective definition. Where do you think the mind is located?
All right. So if you ask me, I do tend to use science and spirituality at the same time. So I don't think the mind is actually physical or in the brain. I mean, it's more your ghost in the machine, if you want to call it, as the Greeks would have stated. But that's how I see it. I mean, there is an extra being that may be in control, which may in religion be referred to as a soul. But again, I mean, some people may think that I'm a little extreme on that concept, but I can physically balance it up between the science and that. But that's just my my take on it.
Sure, exactly. So you're right. The mind is all pervading. It exists at the cellular level, at the DNA level. It exists wherever there is the electromagnetic field we call spirit flowing within us. And that, of course, there is also a quote unquote mind in leaves, there is a mind in the water, there is a mind in every single molecule that has life in it, in the world. And it's important to understand that mind, like the body, like our health, which goes back to the title of the book, are all gifts to us. And when somebody gives us a gift, we usually, even if it is a small thing, we say it's the thought that matters. We show gratitude. And imagine, let us imagine when we strip the spirituality out of our lives, how things that we were looking at as gratitude, as gifts for which we should be having gratitude every day, became entitlements, right? So therefore, it's my body. I do what I want with it. In appearance and even legally, it sounds okay. Unfortunately, we forgot to add, it's my body. I do what I want with it. I also have the responsibility of protect it. In church language, it's called one's body is one's temple, right?
Yeah.
So this idea about having, feeling, thinking, talking and acting in a responsible way for gifts that are given to us, meaning that we would be grateful for the responsibilities that come with these gifts, was lost during the Newtonian period, which lasted really up to last century, earlier last century, and after that, when quantum physics came into being, if you will, and so we realized, and the scientists realized, that they could not run experiments without uh, taking into consideration the consciousness of the individuals who are running those experiences, because anything from water, and we have the Emoto experiment, the consciousness of water in Japan, and let us remember, water is over 75% in nature, isn't it? When we
Yeah,
are
right.
when we are babies, particularly the water is about what 70%. As we grow older, it gets reduced to 55% in our body. Water is a conductor of electricity. So all these things conjoin into showing that because of our consciousness, we dictate A, what we emanate, and B, what we attract. I don't want to get too long on the matter, but for example, let's take the case of individuals who have learned helplessness, who have learned that it is okay to be in a subservient position. And they have learned it because of the life experiences which created certain concepts in their lives about what is and what is not, quote unquote, normal. So if they've learned that it's okay to put oneself in a subservient position, they will be finding partners who will be really abusing them and taking advantage of them, and vice versa. Individuals who are respecting themselves will be finding other partners um, out of all this ocean of human beings who will be respecting themselves. I'm not talking here about abusive situations where somebody is kidnapped or taken away and treated in a way that is beyond his or her control at the time. I'm talking about our choices based on how we look at ourselves. There was an experiment called the 50, 10, 40%. And this experiment simply states that what defines our life's experience is based on three factors. The first one is the genetic aspect of our build-up. That's 50%. Very little we can do in terms of addressing it. We can make recourse to medications and prayers and what have you, and at the same time, it's pretty much etched in stone. There are two more aspects: the outside factors and one's perception. So which one of those two would be the 10 and which one of those two would be the 40%? do you think?
Well, I would say the 40% will be the perceptions, and 10 will be the other one.
So you are absolutely correct. And isn't it strange that people would actually prioritize for that 10% outside factors the majority of their lives? And they will pay such little attention very often to the actual 40%, which is having a sound, healthy, respectful, loving perception about themselves and about the environment and other people. And therein lies the problem with people stating, I'm happy or I'm unhappy. It's because they are prioritizing on the 10%, which has its role as 10%, and they are ignoring the 40%, the introspection that is so much needed to create the healthy, loving, respectful, and very often forgiving or self-forgiving perception, which is necessary for happiness.
Gabriel, you mentioned the concept where someone can attract a similar personality, but in positive or negative, but I think that is something we experience. It's really you are, who you surround yourself with, and to your earlier point of energy, positivity, gets positivity, negativity gets negativity. It's like almost the opposite. Well, not opposite tracks. They're literally completely different poles in a battery, and they have different ways of operating. And so you'll find negative folks, gravitate around negativity, and or vice versa, and then therefore they get more in a negative spin. And then the positives will probably, find or look forward to positivity and find a way to interact with positive folks. And a lot of books, a lot of studies have shown that. I mean, I personally believe in positivity as a key. I don't try to think about negativity. There's no reason for it. But I mean, unfortunately, it exists, and it's just a mind way of thinking. I mean, sometimes people they blame the world for things, and but to your point, if they just got themselves out of it and just like I just look the other way. I mean, there is the other side of the coin. Flip it. And you'll see a big difference. And unfortunately, some people may have difficulty getting to that point, but people can seek help and certainly turn and become in a very positive spin. You mentioned thankfulness, which is the core concept here. We have to be thankful for things, but now that begs a question of spirituality or religion to a degree, because if you tend to have religion, regardless of what the denomination is, there's always a link with God, spiritual stuff, and ultimately that I'm here for a reason. I'm thankful to God. I'm thankful to my Creator. Blah blah. But then some people may not have that, and in today's society, we have a mix of different beliefs, and so they might not have that core concept of supreme being, someone that is some and the entity that created us, and therefore they take everything for granted. You said it. It's my body. I do whatever I want. But in some religious aspect, well, it's not your body. It was given to you as a trust. It's something that you have to take care of.
And they are both true. And they are both true. You're absolutely correct. Now, I come from a communist country, and I grew up in a country where the communists were not indifferent to God. They hated God. And that was shown throughout the 50 years of destroying churches, imprisoning priests, prohibiting, as the case was in Romania, a whole church, the Byzantine Catholic Church, and killing 8 of their bishops, who are now beatified, and a host of other priests. And really, the Orthodox Church in Romania also has its martyrs and so forth. So why is it that if I'm declared that there is no God, that I hate God? So obviously the communists, and that goes back to Karl Marx and his idea that there is no God. Actually, he went more on the other side, where yes, there is spirituality, there is negative spirituality and positive spirituality, and I'm going to be the proverbial devil's best trick, where I convince you that there is no God, I convince you that there is no devil, and therefore you fall for it, and in the name of atheism, then I can actually be anti-spirituality. So if I'm anti-spiritual, how am I denying that there is a spirit? You understand? So it's a non sequitur right there in the thinking. Now, it's a choice. I can deny the electromagnetic spiritual aspect of me. That's fine. I have free choice. Neither God nor Satan can actually convince me. And the communists, God knows, try to convince the political prisoners to deny God. They didn't want to destroy the bodies alone. They wanted the individual to essentially curse God. So there is this idea, yeah, there is this idea that I have a choice. My suggestion to those who say there is no God is I could understand the Gnostic aspect of it, where somebody says, I don't know if there is a God. I don't know if there is Satan. I don't know if there is positive or negative energy. However, if somebody says, I know that there is no God, that's a pretty high bar to prove. And so therefore it's not a science in showing that there is no God. It's more like the religion of non-God. It's a belief system. And as such, really, it's highly subjective, and it comes with its price. Because if I deny my beingness, then I'm going to suffer, am I not, from that end? Just like the folks in certain areas like ascetic cults, from the Christian monks to the Indians, fakirs and such, they are denying the having, the human aspect in them, and they pay the price in terms of physical health. So it's a choice. Sorry for being so long.
No, no, it's pretty deep stuff. I mean, it's obviously we're not going to the religion aspect of it, but certainly to be thankful, is a big, burden, and to have that feeling of thankfulness, you need to be aware that something was given to you, and I think that's really where you vary in opinion, because anyone with some background of religion will believe that that you were given things. I mean, right now I'm talking to you. If I didn't
Yes,
have a voice, I mean, how well will I be able to communicate? I mean, there's technology now I can do, but it's not the same. I can see you. I can enjoy the weather. I can enjoy everything around me. My eyesight is a gift, but I have to see that as such. But some people say, no, that's just granted. I was,
exactly. And
it's
it's
my
not
DNA.
granted, is it? It's not
Well,
granted.
again, it's
Uh,
subject to argument.
yes,
Some people say, well, no, that's just the nature. Okay, we can call it nature. That's fine. But it's still given and it's still available to us. And I had a debate, well, not debate, a discussion a couple of days ago, about a simple concept that people may, if they just reflect on it, they'll change their way of thinking. Color. Now, let me specify what I mean with color. If the whole world, everything had the same color, I'm not talking black and white, I mean, just be the same color, how would we even see the world or even interact in the world? Because I wouldn't even know what my hands versus my legs, unless I touch them, I would not know the difference. My desk, my camera, anything around you will not be able to identify. That's just one little thing. Just
yes.
differentiating colors can make you, appreciate things. And I mean, we can talk about this for hours, but that's just like an example where you can say like, wow, I am thankful. I mean, you read a lot of people say, I wake up in the morning, I'm healthy, I can see, I have no problems, thank God, or I'm thankful. They might not say thank God, but they just, I'm thankful.
Yeah,
But some people may just wake up, take it for granted. It's just another day. And again,
right.
it's all a mindset and how people see it.
So in English, exactly, in English, the word thankful really means thinking fully. So by simple virtue of being able to think, if you to use the biblical terms of knowing the difference between the good and evil, right? Then by default, I'm realizing how lucky I am to be and have all these electromagnetic and physical aspects of me, which make me a functional human being. I wanted to address, if I may, well, gratitude is hard because it interferes with the ego wanting to be supreme, in control, always accepted, loved, honored, and so forth. When I'm grateful, I'm giving deference to somebody else. And so therefore the ego and the spirit have a little bit of dueling there to do, right? By the way, the word spirit actually comes from spiral. So it's the same kind of spiral that we see in the water going down the sink, or the hurricane, as per your nom de plume here, right? When we look at a hurricane, we see the spiral. When we look at our fingerprints, we see the spiral. When we look at the Milky Way, we see the spiral.
Same movement. Yep.
So exactly. So when we talk about the spirit, what we really mean is the spiral of the magnetic consciousness, which allows us to think and make decisions for better or worse. And it's very hard, gratitude. I mean, if you remember the example of Jesus Christ healing 10 lepers. Do you know how many of them came back to thank him? One.
I was going to say one, but I didn't want to go wrong.
One. So it was only 1 out of 10 who took the trouble to thank him. And he was a foreigner. He wasn't even part of his people. So the question that Jesus had at the time as a healer was, where are the other 9? So the other 9 were following their ego, whereas the one coming to thank him followed his heart.
Well, yeah. ego can be your worst enemy. I mean, we experience ego in a lot of, in our world every day. I mean, and humans, I mean, we do have pride. And if we can't control it, I mean, we tend to give credit to ourselves and never to the others. And even when people do things for you, I mean, it's funny, I put a little meme few weeks back, or a video about the power of thank you. It's not a difficult thing. Thank you. I mean, it doesn't hurt. It's 2 words that mean a lot. And that's unfortunate that people have a little bit of difficulty saying thank you. Just after receiving, because like in my work, for example, in insurance and leadership, I mean, I tend to be a leader in my world, in my role. And, but I am thankful for the people that work with me, because they're the ones who actually do the work and make the success happen. And so I cannot say it's me, it was my thing. And again, I do have shows and discussions about leadership. A true leader will never say, I did it. We did it.
Yes.
And that's a big, concept that some people may elude or they just may ignore, because they don't want to admit that it's not them. But exactly. It's really, but then again, that has to do with how you were brought up, your influences, why, and again, we hear about this power trips, and people tend to, you get to a certain level and I own the world. This is all me.
Yeah.
No, it's not all you. There's factors that get you there.
And they're both correct. I mean, the ego has its purpose in terms of having values, which then allow for one to accumulate anything from food to comfort. It is generated from the back of our head in the reptilian brain part of our overall brain, if you will. And then in the front, where the forehead is, we have the mammalian brain, and this is the one that is has the ingrained, the genetic aspect for most of us in terms of sacrificing oneself, doing something that is for the best benefit of other people, places, things, ideas, than it is for us, including but not limited to the ultimate sacrifice, which is dying for the loved cause or people. So they are both there. They have a purpose, provided again that they are both balanced. You got it. Absolutely.
It's all about the balance.
Yeah. So when I hear individuals saying yes, but I would like to just say that from my end, I say yes, and The reason for that is that, yes, we have a half empty part of the glass and a half full part of the glass. They are both there. The question is, what do I choose to focus on, particularly about events which are not anymore in my control? So the ego wants to be right. Right, and as it turns out, miserable, as you and I spoke before at the beginning of the program, because the ego wants to be right under any circumstances. When it comes to past events or situations beyond our control, certainly the ego should relent to the spiritual in us, which is, let me just be wrong and happy as opposed to right and miserable. So what does mean wrong? Wrong. I've met clients who have been wrongfully convicted and stayed in prison for 25 years, and then they were exonerated because of the DNA. And they told me when I was doing the group and individual therapy sessions, listen, I came to the understanding that if I don't focus at what is good in my life, meaning comfort, good people, good places, things, choices, activities, the day is going to go and leave, whether I'm miserable because I'm wrong and miserable, or whether I am at peace at least and serene and find reasons to be grateful for everything I can in this very day. And in so doing, I am at peace. So whether they were in prison or after that on the outside, they chose to find reasons for which to be grateful every single day. Same for individuals who have very, very difficult health problems. Same for individuals who are in very abusive situations. Again, when it comes to, like you and I said earlier, to opportunities to progress in life, whether externally or internally, yes, let me do it. And at the same time, let me also be grateful for everything that I can see in terms of having and or being values for this very day, because it comes and goes whether I choose or not choose to find reasons to be grateful for. Forgiveness is a big thing because the word forgiveness, where does it come from, right? Forgive in 1300s English language was before give before. So give before is part of one of the Psalms where it says, give before the Lord all your worries. So imagine the collection plate where you put money. The idea is that when you forgive, you give before the Lord in that imaginary collection place all your hurt and anger, and it's done, it's gone, it's over with. So the open wound becomes now a scar, and that's it, right? Just like I wouldn't think about going into the church and taking my donation money back, so shouldn't I, once I give before the Lord all my worries, do it. So yeah, so before the Lord was flipped to before give before forgive. You see where it was flipped, and now we say forgive. In the Romance languages, the same concept works, where you can say adios in Spanish. What does that mean? It means to God, right? Same thing. In French, pardonner, what does it mean? Pardon. The governor pardons. Excuse me, not because it's right, but he or she pardons simply for the sake of it. So it's not an issue about being right. It's an issue about doing something kind. So again, there is a functional and clinical and psychological approach as to why forgiveness outside the religious dogmatic aspect is a functional tool in self-help and healing and therapy. I again elaborate more in the book on that. We don't have time to do it now, but that's the main concept.
Well, I mean, again, those are real deep and maybe at length, discussions, just each one of them. But to your point, I mean, the only thing that I would like to just add to that is that with today's society, unfortunately, comes with, too much complex stuff. it is very easy to forget. It is actually very easy to thankful, but it's how you set up your mind to think about it. You know, to your point, what's gone is gone. What's done is done. You can't change a word. If something has happened, you can't change it. So you can dwell about it, you can lose sleep about it, or you can just learn from it and move on and maybe to a better thing and hopefully avoid it. But some people will actually, really just hang on to bad or good, whatever the case may be, and they don't want to move on. And I think that's the part that makes a difference between someone that's willing to just, okay, I get it. Life is gonna move on with the good and the bad and the ugly. And again, we see history. History, changes over time, and we've seen, successes, and we've seen losses. We've seen a lot of crazy, good, bad, and ugly, and everything. But the fact of the matter is, people, like again, another quote is, don't live in the past, enjoy the present, and look forward to the future, because you can make a difference. You can change things. Regardless of the environment that you've lived in, sometimes people can make a difference, but they have to be willing to do it. And that is not easy for everybody. And again, thank you, gratitude, understanding the values of those things. But now the problem is we live in a society that is giving you the guidance. What are the actual features that you have to have, and therefore you value everything with, again, position. I have to have certain things to really be thankful. But you can have enough food for the day, and you're healthy, and you don't have to have a castle. You just can be happy. And you can have, mansions and not have a happy life.
And be miserable. Yes, yes.
So it's not like you can have a mansion. I always make this analogy. Where do you sleep? I mean, how big is your bed? It can be a California king size. If there's anything bigger than that, you're still gonna be sleeping in one corner of that bed. So yes. That's how much space you're gonna take in the bed. Even if you rotate, it's always gonna be the same. So yes. It's just the way you see things. And I think that's the difference in how people can shift. If you start analyzing certain things and just like seeing like the magnitude, again, we had a discussion with a friend of mine a couple of days ago about the universe. I mean, we talked about the Mars rover yesterday or 2 days ago. I mean, we're not going to talk about that because some people are like, well, maybe it happened, didn't happen. I'm not even going to go into that challenge right now. But the world, the universe, we are a speck in the universe. I mean, the whole Earth, the whole galaxy is nothing compared to this creation or massive, vast universe. And when you think about it, like, hello, you got to reflect on things. And maybe that can sometimes you look, wait, we have a mission. We are here for a reason. And again, we can debate the reason, but we live it, and we live among other folks, and we need to be able to interact with them in a positive way, and hopefully, live a good imprint, a good influence, as opposed to the other, and stop living with people's standards. Yes. That's the other thing, because people's standards are dictating how we live.
Yes. And, I'm sorry, go on.
No, that's it. I just wanted to make
Yeah, sure. So what one is comforted in is to know that because energy has no beginning, no end, and is continuous, and our consciousness is part of that electromagnetic field, when one dies, he or she expires. In other words, the spirit leaves. It's a little bit like a driver leaving the car. And for those who only focus on the vehicle, they will say, oh, you know what? The driver must be dead because there are no lights, the engine is not running, and they don't take into consideration the fact that simply the driver parked the car, or sold it or something, but the driver is still around, and that's the conscious aspect of it. So that's forever. The problem comes when the individuals try to bring that forever and continuous and universal plenitude of the energy we call spirit and consciousness into material aspects of it. So Erich Fromm used to say, and he wrote a book called To Be or To Have, interestingly, and he was one of the authors I studied, and I paraphrased from when I wrote my book. He said, well, when they say the pursuit of freedom and liberty and so forth, that's fine. When you say the pursuit of wealth and you want to reach the top, can one ever have all the money in the world? No. and because the matter A is limited and the matter rather is perishable. So bringing that desire for complete control over material things is silly. It's a little bit like shooting yourself in the foot at the beginning of the race, because it's important to understand the temporality of matter, whatever that is. This too shall pass. It's a quotation from the Bible when it comes to material aspects. So it's important to keep within the right perspective, right? The being values and the having values, to make room for both of them. One certainly can choose to ignore one or another with the proper understanding of damage that one does by atrophying one aspect or another of his or her life. One thing I wanted to also add is the consistent need for growing internally or externally, if you will, the practice, right? Any runner, dancer, any artist or sports person or writer will know that one needs to consistently be active in order to be efficient in what he or she does. The same goes for changing, like you said, the paradigm from being seeking occasions to get offended, as Wayne Dyer used to say, to seeking occasions to be grateful for. One is to be consistent like this. Otherwise, the difference is between, let's say, the stereotypical French person who keeps drinking 2 glasses of red wine every day of the week, as opposed to the stereotypical dude from the States who doesn't drink anything Monday through Friday, but then comes Saturday and Sunday, drinks plenty and goes out, right? So the same thing works for one's mentality. One is to be consistent, or else if he or she does it once in a while, it's not going to work. If one is consistent, by the way, there is the concept of neuroplasticity, where the brain switches its circuitry from what we would consider, based on MRIs and other tests, to be the formatting of the brain of somebody who's clinically depressed to being clinically optimistic. So it does happen. And by the way, the thought is the one dictating the emotions and the feelings and the words and the actions, not the other way around. People say, well, the neighbor got me mad, so I hit him. Okay, fine. So before you got mad,
What happened?
What happened? So if that idea about focusing on the thought as the primary triggering factor for better or worse, and responding to daily concerns as opposed to reacting is done, again, consistently, then one has a pretty good chance to go through life happy, serene, grateful, and thankful.
Well, that is, I mean, it's super extreme, you know, all the stuff that you mentioned here. And the example you mentioned about the neighbor case, right? But really, we tend, I think that's a general thing. A lot of folks would rather find a reason why others are responsible, as opposed to looking within themselves, like, because you could avoid the conflict. I mean, you know, in one of our channels is the Fit and Fab, and we do fitness, and we introduce also martial arts, and the same concept. I mean, yeah, you could fight, but you can also avoid the fight. There's no reason to fight. And you know, somebody states something, okay, good, you walk away and that's it. You're not going to lose anything. And it's not, again, if the ego comes back, now we get excited. But
Yeah,
you control that. But the problem is in all aspects of our worlds today, work, personal, whatever, we tend to always find why you are the blame, not me. But when there's a conflict, there's both of us to blame. You know,
sure.
you know, it's not who started it. It doesn't matter, because you started, I can finish it by walking away and ignoring it, or I can just
Yeah,
get into it and get excited about it.
yeah.
So, and then the other item, sorry, the other item that I was gonna just comment on is, you mentioned about the values and the body and all that stuff, but you can actually have the world in your hand, meaning you can, you know, always think about positioning your hand, but not in your heart. The problem is when people put in their heart, that's it. It becomes everything. You know, you
Yeah,
can, if it's in your hand, you're in control. If it's in your heart, forget it. Meaning, heart means in your mind, it's like you cannot survive with it. And those
Yeah,
are two different, elements that can make or break how you see things.
yeah. Excellent point. It's the question that I ask myself is very often when I want to do something, am I doing this out of love or am I doing this out of fear, if you will, not to anger or so forth? If I'm going to do it out of love, I'm going full sail with it. If I'm doing it out of fear, there is a conflict between what I want to do and what I am doing. And it's a little bit in the latter case like driving the car, flooring the gas pedal with the handbrake on. What do you think is going to happen to that vehicle?
Destroyed, it will spin.
This absolutely, it's going to explode it and or implode it. So imagine that that vehicle is our body. So if I continue to do what I don't want to do, then I'm essentially setting up myself up for early damage and departure. Again, it starts with how I look at things, the thought. And therefore, it's important to either, it's one of the few times I'm using the either or fallacy, because usually there are more aspects to it. But in this case, I either do it out of love or I don't do it. And if I'm doing something out of obligation, which triggers me to be angry because I fear not to be rejected, then I have to either change how I look at this, where I could start doing it out of love or not do it at all. So just to give you an example, one of my clients, um, before he went to prison, he had a baby. And he looked at changing diapers and providing and so forth as a big drag. So he was doing what he was doing out of fear for not being sued and so forth. And he did a terrible job. He ended up going to prison. While he was in prison, he realized, man, I'm behind the bars. Instead of this, I could, my son is growing up. I wish I could have been there. And he started basically to look at his duty as a parent, not as not as a duty, but as a gift. So I started looking at that very idea of changing diapers, being protective of the son and of the mother as a gift. And in so doing, he became grateful for doing, when he came out, this very same thing that he would be doing begrudgingly before. Because again, the action was the same. The son was a little bigger, but still the action was the same. However, because he now was doing this out of love, looking at this as a privilege, he enjoyed the whole experience. So again, either I do what I do out of love, or I don't do it, or I change what I do from doing it out of fear to doing it out of love. Otherwise, I have a conflict between ideas and actions, could be a conflict between what I want and what I want, and that's essentially setting me up for anything from psychosomatic diseases, high blood pressure, ulcers, and such, to basically um, exploding, right? And doing something stupid. And all that comes because of that perception aspect. The thought is the key to everything else. So we have essentially the thoughts, which lead to um, feelings, to lead to emotion, to words, to actions, to habits, to our destiny. I mean, there is the whole model which I wrote about this, and it's a very step-by-step process. And it can be changed by going backwards, right, from one's position or station in life to what led to that, right? Because everything on the outside, words, actions, are the tip of the iceberg. However, the iceberg is much bigger and underneath, right? The feelings, the thoughts, and probably the lower part was what did the Titanic in, not so much the iceberg on the top. So
Yeah, it was.
yeah, yeah.
Well, we have this question that we always, we hear about. What would you have changed in your life if you had to restart again? And I think if you ask that question, I guarantee that anybody listening and watching right now, they have a whole list of things that they could have done differently to change them. And then also it takes a level of maturity, because I think with age and wisdom, I think, and experience in life, you do realize that we make mistakes. And some of them were just really dumb mistakes that we could have avoided, but ego came on the way, living by other standards, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, really, I have to be content with what I need. I don't have to do it for people. I have to do it for me. And even at work, we say this all the time. If you do something that you don't like, and you work in, with a job that is really not something you enjoy, you're actually going to feel it. But if you do something you enjoy, you will never feel like you're working. So those are just, concepts, but, they're deep and people can apply them. But if you reflect on them long enough, or just put them in front of you and hear about them, oh, well, I can do that. Yes, you can. I think everybody can.
Yeah. So you raised a very interesting point. There is an interesting expression in English. The past is history. The future is uncertain. The present is a gift, which is why it's called the present. So rather than focusing on the history, long gone, not much I can do about it except employ forgiveness, and or pursuing the reparatory actions where there is something in my control, or both, at the internal level, at least the part about forgiveness. The future is uncertain, right? We don't know if we wake up tomorrow. There is absolutely no
guarantee.
No guarantee, because we're talking about the gift of life here. And as such, the gift is, and now it isn't. So basically, I would focus in terms of what is it that I can do today to find and be in peace, while I can think, feel, talk, and act in terms of progressing either externally or internally. And the internal part, again, the 40%, the perception aspect, right, to the external part, it's been used beautifully by individuals who are bedridden, by individuals who were in prisons, communists, Nazis, South Africa, all kinds of prisons, wrongfully convicted individuals, rightfully convicted individuals who were sent to the box, to isolation. And what happened was that when everything is taken away from the individual at the material level, one can focus at what he doesn't have, or what can focus at what he or she can do to progress internally. And therein lies the aspect of progressing internally, where nothing on the outside is in my control anymore. So there is always, like I said, half full, half empty. The half full, short of traumatic brain injury or other issues that are affecting the functionality of the brain and the consciousness, that's always a half full there, where I am always in control of it, where I can always progress about it, regardless of the 10% outside factors.
Wow. Gabriel, I mean, it's been an hour. I mean, we can go on.
Thank you.
This is some good stuff. I mean, maybe we'll have to do a sequel to this one, but definitely, just because of the time, and we're about to end the show. I will have the description of the book available on the description show here, and the link and all stuff. So please feel free to check it out and check other, I guess, books and good stuff, good feed. Good information that that can have valuable impact on people's lives. So please do check those things out. Any last words, to the audiences listening and watching right now?
So thank you again for the possibility of coming here and sharing these ideas. Also, the book is free in PDF. It can be ordered. It can also be free. One can get, and I'm sure you'll provide the information either at my webpage or at my LinkedIn account. The idea with the book is this: I already have a day job, so I'm not relying on selling books. The concepts that are there are for people to use as as needed, as wanted. So the book is free in PDF form for those who may want to read it. Thank
All
you
right.
again.
Well, that is excellent. I mean, when you say we're free, I mean that you beat every price, right? Well, no, thank you. It's my privilege here, and I mean certainly a very interesting and deep conversation, and it has a lot of different meanings, and I think a lot of people can benefit from the core of it. Just at least to reflect on things in a different light, and hopefully change the way they see life and how they
Yes.
operate, and maybe some people would see value today and start implementing some of these good advice, right? And
Yes.
so that being said, thank you, Gabriel. For those of you who are watching or listening in, thank you for watching the iHealth channel, FitnFab channel, and listening on iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here. So until the next one next week, I will say bye bye and have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you all.